You are watching the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, your escape to reality.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Oh,
Hi, Steve.
hey, Steve. What are you
How
doing
you
there?
doing, man?
And then all of a
Hey.
sudden, I'm just sitting here, and there's Steve and Bob and Jay and Kara.
Happy Juneteenth, I guess. I mean, did you say
Yay,
happy
Juneteenth.
Juneteenth?
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
It's a celebration. It's like
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of a
We've
weird.
Celebration, bitches.
Historically, it's interesting because it's the celebration of the end of slavery, but it's
2.5
just
years
when
later.
the last people got the news. It was it was literally 2.5 years after the Emancipation Proclamation.
Years.
2.5 years.
Well, but that's also because Texas had seceded from the Union.
Yeah.
So Texas was not recognizing any of the the country of
the
America's
Union
mandate.
laws. Yeah.
Yeah.
It
And
had
they
to,
were like the last holdouts.
It wasn't
from
until
the
they
war.
surrendered, and then we sent in the general. But the thing is, the people didn't even hear. Like the slaves in Texas didn't even know it happened.
Yeah.
It wasn't that they just said,
That's
we're not
horrible,
obeying the laws. They just the news didn't even spread.
Yeah,
Apparently,
and it's like the Japanese soldiers on the islands in the Pacific. Some of them, I believe, I don't know if it's hyperbole or not, but they said the 1970s.
Yeah.
Some of them held out
wow.
till, and just grew old people and eventually died, but never knowing that.
I saw a Gilligan's Island show about that. It was very interesting.
But yeah,
Holy
Juneteenth
crap.
is funny to me because it's it's so well known in Texas, right? Because
Yeah.
that's where the holiday originated. So I grew up with Juneteenth and we would celebrate it, which is interesting because Texas still has a lot of racial problems.
Yeah.
But I'm surprised by how many people who are getting hip to Juneteenth now, like had never even heard of it before today.
It's a cool
Yeah.
reason to celebrate.
It is, yeah.
It is.
I mean, it's one of a lot of people are petitioning, like, let's do away with Columbus Day because, come on, and let's do let's
Juneteenth.
add Juneteenth because it's not a federal holiday.
Yeah.
It's only a state holiday.
46
only
though. 46
Yeah,
states.
46
I
states.
think recognized.
But you don't get off work necessarily. You don't get
Yeah.
a paid
Right, it's not-
vacation.
it's not a
considered
bank
a-
holiday. Yeah,
Yeah.
So can I
Yeah.
ask you guys a sensitive question?
Yeah, of course.
that depends.
I can
I'll have my
go
finger
either
on
way
the
with
edit
that.
button. Go
Oh
ahead.
boy.
Steve,
Yeah, right.
yeah, ready, get ready.
Go ahead.
Ian, get ready to,
On it.
7-second delay. Oh.
Well, it's definitely something that people are discussing and it's angering people, but it also is something that I'd like to hit directly on the head.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think about what would you call it? Is that not so much redacting, but just saying like Gone with the Wind had racial things in it.
Mm-hmm.
So we should either limit its access or, strike it from the freaking record, right?
Oh, I see. It's kind of the idea of like, it's sort of like the statue issue, right? Like a lot of people are taking down Confederate statues.
Exactly.
But there's, I think, a good rationale for that, which is these are monuments to people. These are celebratory monuments.
They
to
were put up
despots.
as propaganda.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. It is propaganda, and they were put up in reaction to
like the
Reconstruction.
1920s, right? I think in the 1920s, and I think you could actually tell because the ones that were put up as propaganda are like cheaper statues. They're not the high quality ones that were put up, say maybe in the 1800s, but the ones that were later that were put up quickly all over the place were far inferior. I
But
remember
even the ones that
I'm
were put up in the 1800s, right? Like I saw a great tweet that somebody wrote was like, "Oh no, if we take down a statue of Christopher Columbus, how will we know about American history?"
What?
And the response was like,
What?
"Bro, you already think Christopher
boy.
Columbus discovered America, so we've got some work to do."
Yeah,
So, and getting
Statues,
back to
props.
Gone with the Wind, it's complicated because, I mean,
It
yeah,
is.
certainly we don't want to just pretend like that part of our history did not exist. It's actually, you know, I think it stands as an important work of film art. You know, there is that, and there's no reason for that to go away. All art was steeped in the biases of their time, you know. But also, we don't want to pretend like people weren't racist in the past. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I think
want the
it's actually really interesting. Almost like a time capsule of the way people thought and functioned back then. But we don't want to present it with. Yeah, but it's hard if you just present it like, look at this great film and like ignore the fact that it was steeped in racism, then that's problematic. So I think what HBO did was an interesting compromise where they said, we're just going to take it down for a bit and put it back with commentary to put it into historical context.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, that's an interesting compromise. I think it's...
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is about the platform that's displaying it, right?
Yeah.
So we know that Birth of a Nation is a propaganda film. You can still access Birth of a Nation, but I think most of us have been educated to understand what Birth of a Nation is and how it fit into the historical context. But if you're airing it on an HBO or, for example, Disney Plus, there are a lot of really early Disney cartoons that are incredibly racist.
Oh my
gosh. Oh my gosh.
We grew up on the Little Rascals, and we were too young at the time to realize how horribly racist that
How about some of those Bugs Bunny cartoons?
Yeah.
Oh my
right. And
gosh.
so because Disney Plus has, you know, a mandate to say, here is a library of information that you can basically plop your child down in front of and it's safe viewing. Of course, they're not going to air some of the things early on that they think are detrimental to children's behavioral development.
Right.
But in HBO, which is adult programming, you know, providing the context and saying, listen, know it for what it was in its time and know that it's problematic.
Yeah.
Like learn from it. I think that's
learn
important.
from it. I think that's the takeaway.
I mean, I think a lot of people, I think part of it is your age, right? Because Bugs Bunny, Little Rascals, you know, we grew up on that stuff. And not only do I not remember having anything negative from a racial perspective hit my brain as a kid, you know, like I don't think I walked away from watching Bugs Bunny and not, you know, having a negative thought about anybody or anything. You
Jay,
know,
you did.
But
that's
you did.
The difference. Though.
Yeah,
You did
totally.
It wasn't
realize
direct. It was subliminal.
Yeah, that's the problem.
But I'm not arguing for it at all. And I'm talking about this because I like being challenged. You know, I want to hear what you have to say. But I guess my point is, so it's a question now. Should we not let kids watch old programming like that?
If it's racist, I wouldn't show it to my kids.
Yeah,
not until they're old enough to contextualize it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I think
because
that's
otherwise
a good
they're
approach.
just going to internalize it as the way the world works, which
Exactly.
is always the problem.
Which is what we did. I mean, we have to be honest with ourselves. When we were little kids, you know, watching the Little Rascals, you know, living in Connecticut, you know, where we lived in, our only exposure to black people was they were entertainment and comic, you know, relief and sidekicks, and they were, you know what I mean. They were always in that role, and that's how we thought about them. You know, that was it.
That's not it though, Steve. I mean, when you say,
though.
well, hold on. Let me say what I'm thinking. Like, I've had an absolute love of funk music my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
I totally identify with funk music. There's something about it. This makes me happy, right? And it's one of the things.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up starting to truly idolize the musicians that were in a bunch of funk bands that I to this day I still listen to and love.
Yeah.
So, you know, when you say just entertainment, I don't think that totally hits the mark. You're right in general terms, but I happen to have an affinity with something like that, and I identified with it. I also love like movies from the 70s that have black actors in it, where the black actors are like the badass, like the good guy badass. I absolutely love
There
those
are
characters.
totally movies from a couple decades ago that have problems, but the problems are intermixed with, like you said, characters that are strong characters. But when we're talking about stuff from the 30s and 40s,
that's
where
dark
these
stuff.
are caricatures of people.
They were caricatures, absolutely.
Right.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
And you look back, this is where the big controversy is coming around Aunt Jemima, around Uncle Ben, and around the cream of wheat guy. His name was
Aunt Jemima.
Yeah, Aunt Jemima, Uncle Ben, and cream of wheat, Rastus.
Oh, yeah.
These were, when you look at the advertisements from the late 1800s up until about the 1930s, they are horrific.
Yeah.
Like we're talking dehumanizing, blackface, almost like ape-like, with this broken English. I mean, it's terrible.
Yeah.
And this is what little kids would sit down in the morning and have the box next to their bowl. This is how this stuff becomes a part of the systemic and institutional culture. It's these small, under the radar things that you don't even realize are affecting you.
Kara, when you put it that way, now I totally agree with you, because you're right. It's not just a one-time thing where, hey, that was a funny thing that just happened. It's more of like this. It's kind of like subliminal programming.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's why you end up with things like the doll test, where you ask the little kid, which doll is prettier, which doll is uglier, which doll looks more like me, even the black children.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point, right? They've internalized all of these ideals.
And Jay, you're also a little bit younger than we are, and those 4 years make a big difference, because this is right around civil rights. Things are changing pretty quickly. And also your example is from when you were older,
Right.
So it's about a decade difference of the examples you're thinking of and the examples that I'm thinking of. But it also applies to women. Like I remember, I think on the show I mentioned that we came across a report card from my wife when she was in grade school, and it said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And the boys were like doctor, astronaut, policeman, and the girls were like nurse, secretary. Like the programming was there from the beginning, and it was complete. Nobody questioned it. It was totally. This is the Mad Men era, right? Totally taken for granted.
And you see it to this day. There's like a really great ad campaign. I can't remember the company. Somebody could probably chat it, because I'm sure they've seen it, where they have kids draw a doctor, draw a firefighter. They only draw boys, and then they bring in a fighter pilot. They bring in one of each of those professions in their uniform, and they're all women. And the kids' minds are blown, first of all, and then they're like, you see the little girls are so excited, because it's just not even an idea in their mind that they could grow up to be that.
Sure.
It's the what they call it, the bigotry of low expectations, right? And you just internalize that, you bake that in from the beginning, and it takes a generation to beat that out of people. It's hard.
A generation of people who are actively anti-racist or anti-sexist. That's the difference. If you're just passively non-racist or non-sexist, the train's going to keep moving. You have to turn the train around, and that takes work.
It takes active work. I felt I've had to actively work on it my whole life. Seriously.
So, all right. Well, sorry, Bob. Go ahead, man.
I often say this, we're talking about movies from decades ago, and it makes me think, I mean, it continues, right? In the 80s, there's movies from the 80s, popular movies that we remember. When you watch them again, you're like, what the hell just happened, right? And it will happen to movies that are out now that we may see, all of us, and be like, that movie's fine. But in 30 years, 20 years, people will say, holy crap, look at this, that they just let that slide. Yeah. And it's, it's just wondering, I'd love to see, what's happening today that we're all okay with, that people in the future be like, yeah, that's pretty sketchy, guys.
I think a lot of it comes down to gender identity. That's going to be one of the big things that we see.
That'll be huge.
Yeah, there's a lot of changes taking place with regards to non-conforming individuals, or even with regards to orientation. I think orientation we've been not ahead of the curve, but that started to become part of people's consciousness sooner. But gender identity there's been a big lag with that for sure.
And atheism, let's not forget that. Atheism is one of those things where there's this baked in prejudice, and it's a huge group,
but it's huge. Vilified group.
And Also, anti-Muslim sentiment.
Yeah.
We saw a huge push of
Islamophobia.
that in modern film. Yeah, Islamophobia.
5,000 years of anti-Semitism too. So let's not forget that.
Yeah, that's not new.
Right, that's not new.
It's always
that just marches on and on. That'll never change.
Oh, somebody mentioned in the chats the Ice Cream Man truck song, and I don't know if you guys have been seeing that it's been trending a little bit on some social media platforms where people are showing the origins of the ice cream truck song. You know, the da 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 da. So we think of that as, do your ears hang low, do they wobble to and fro, or at least those are the lyrics that I learned.
Yeah.
No way.
Your ears hang low.
Yeah.
And before that,
tie them in a knot, tie them in a bow.
Yeah, and before that, a long time ago, when it wasn't even on American shores, it had other names. But when it first came to American shores, literally the title of the song was N-word Love a Watermelon. It was one of the most racist recordings ever portrayed. And they utilized it for not all, but many of the ice cream trucks. And so there's some great editorials online about Black parents saying, like, do I teach my kids about this?
Yeah, that's insane.
When they're singing along, like, what, how do we grapple with the fact that it's so entwined in our culture? We don't even realize it.
Yeah.
So if any movie, is a period piece on slavery, are you saying that we should have a disclaimer in the front of it
No, that's a big difference. So a movie that's a period piece, like let's say 12 Years a Slave, it shows how things were. What I'm talking about is propaganda in films.
Yeah, I mean,
films where there's a white bias, where Black people are shown as being inferior, not films. Where
that's hugely important.
Scenario.
Gone with the Wind is Southern propaganda. I mean, let's face it. It is what's the phrase they use? Like the lost cause. They were just fighting the noble fight, and slaves were happy slaves. They were happy to be slaves and work on the plantation. Mm-hmm. And the Northerners made everything terrible. I mean, that's I don't know if you've watched it soon. Again, it's wonderful film, but it always bothered me. As a Yankee, like this is Southern propaganda. But the which doesn't bother me that much. But it's like, the slavery angle, like they whitewashed slavery.
Yeah, I would say like take something like 12 Years a Slave, or another version of that, and then take something like Birth of a Nation, and then figure out where on the continuum the film that you're viewing falls, and think about what that means for the film.
Wait a minute.
You want me to entertain?
You want me to like consider this stuff?
Yeah. And if you've never seen Birth of a Nation, I think it's important to see it because it's, it was one of the first talkies, right? Was it a talkie? I can't remember. I have seen it, but I can't remember if it just had cards or if it was.
There was a voiceover at least.
But it was a massive hit, and they aired it in the White House. I mean, they did a screening in the White House. And I mean, this was a big film and people flocked to see it. Yeah. And when you watch it, it's a horrific racist propaganda. Yeah. And so understanding that context to the present day, I think is really important.
Yep. Thank you for that. I always learn stuff with you guys. By the way,
before I forget, I think it was a few now of these streams ago, we were talking about the old time radio show for kids where the guy was caught on a hot mic saying that ought to hold the little bastards. You guys remember that?
Yeah. Oh yes.
And a couple of people emailed us to say that that's a myth. I'm like, okay. I gotta check. I have because I have a solid memory of hearing
knowing that.
Gotta love our brain.
Hearing it. No. But here's the thing.
I know where I got it from.
We had Steve. We had a record of bloopers, and we listened. It wasn't that so I'm like, all right, did I imagine hearing it? But I have a memory of actually hearing it, and so I researched it as much as I could. And yes, it is 100% myth. It's usually attached 100%. To Uncle Don, but it's an urban myth. You could never attach it to any one person with any firsthand evidence. And the myth tends to follow a lot of people, a lot of children, radio and TV hosts, but it tends to coalesce around the most famous one from the early days of radio, Uncle Don, I think. But it predates him, right? But there are references to it that predate him, so it can't be real.
Interesting.
Or he borrowed it.
But
Steve,
yes.
Well, finish your thought.
But here's the thing. So, in the 1970s, there was a record produced called something about bloopers, right? TV's greatest bloopers, or TV and radio's greatest bloopers. And a lot of them were not real, but what they did was they did a recreation of the blooper and didn't say it was a recreation.
Oh,
so
no.
I did hear it. I heard it and thought I was listening to
something genuine,
the actual broadcast, but it was an undisclosed recreation. And that when I was doing my research, that bloopers record, really reignited that myth. That myth was kind of fading away, but then it became unstoppable.
So did the guy who did it, was it funny, Steve?
Funny as hell.
What do you mean the guy who did what?
The guy, what do you mean? What you're talking about?
Was the recreation funny?
Yes.
Yeah, it was hilarious.
Okay. But Steve, my memory is different.
All right.
My memory is that we had a blooper book with big pictures and what they said. That's my memory.
We had that. I remember that too.
Do you? All right.
I remember that as well, but I think we had both.
Okay.
So I remember hearing it.
I remember the book.
Now, again, that could be a false memory, but it does coincide with history. I remember that greatest bloopers record and listening to it. But anyway,
to me, it was a shaky memory as well until The Simpsons parodied it.
Yeah.
When Kent Brockman got on there and said, "That'll hold the little bastards," and then he's like, "Kent Brockman fired" is the next news clip on the TV. So I went
Total
crazy.
myth.
It was so funny,
Total
and
myth.
then that burned it into my brain.
Yeah.
The takeaway is that even when something didn't happen, if people think it happened, somebody might actually recreate it, and that might become the new that's it.
Well, it's
you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's also the fact that, again, we've been doing this for a long time, and we're pretty, media savvy, skeptical savvy, but there's still lots of shit in our heads that's not true. Of
course, yeah.
Our brains have been full of so much false crap. We're going to constantly come across it. But that's why that's one of my favorite things about doing the show is the crowdsourcing. It's where you're much more likely to pick up things like this. Because otherwise I would have gone to my grave thinking this thing was real.
Most annoying.
How many
One of the best and worst things about doing the show.
I love it. I love that. Like, I loved learning that was a myth,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
That's part of the fun. And Jay, whenever we've researched quotes in the past, how many times have we come across a quote totally misattributed?
Misattributed. Very common.
Absolutely. So we have to double check everything.
Totally. It got to the point where there was quotes that I couldn't use because I couldn't figure out who actually
That's
said
right.
it.
If I can't nail it down, I'm not going to use it, basically.
Yeah.
Or call it misattributed, but...
Right. Or has been historically attributed to, but we don't really know.
Right. Especially when it's Mark Twain, everything's attributed to Mark Twain. It's like, okay, go check this out. Go find the book.
And Jay and I were just talking about the fact, because we're always trying to quality control our research, is like you get into these problems where you're just following a trail of false, attributions. In other words, it's just the same reference repeated over and over again. It's really hard to break out of that. So sometimes I'll find 2 or 3 or 4 references. I think, okay, that's enough to say this is legit, but it isn't, because they're just all copying the same, false reference.
Yeah.
And then you become one more, right? Then I add to the list of false references. So yeah, you just got to keep pushing. So you're really, really sure. You got to look to see that it's fake. You know what I mean? You have to really try to show that it's fake.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, so I think this is my personal experience. This week has been, since the coronavirus hit, even though there's been an uptick, I listen to the multiple news sources every day, quite a bit. This week has been a pretty light week in my news feed.
Interesting.
But not for me.
It seems like these upticks have taken up. I mean, other than all of the news around Black Lives Matter that's continuing, and all of the kind of mini wins that we're seeing across the board from a result of the protests. In terms of COVID, I feel like there's been a lot of coverage about these horrible upticks. Like Florida is persona non grata right now.
This week has been the worst single week of the entire pandemic worldwide.
Let me clarify what I was saying was my emotional response to the news this week wasn't gut-wrenchingly crippling.
Yeah, but I think that's a disconnect, though. That's a problem, in my opinion, is that we're feeling like we're on the other side of this. But if you really look at the numbers, we're not. This pandemic is chugging along. And
I might be getting numbed out, Steve.
I know, but that's a problem. We get numbed out. We get complacent. You know, we have people saying, you know, on the news, I'm not worried about it anymore. It's fine, whatever. And it's like, no, our numbers are still going up.
I have to be
in the middle. You know, there's no second wave. We're in the middle of the first wave.
You're totally right. You're right. I am fatigued. I'm getting fatigued.
Yeah, it's a problem.
You may need to take a little bit of a news and social break for a few days.
Yeah,
sometimes walking away and then coming back into it can be really, I think, recalibrating.
So I have Alexa, and it's my tradition in the morning. My ritual is I get up, I make coffee for me and my wife, and I tell Alexa, tell me the news, and it's my list of curated news sources, right? Mm-hmm. And this morning I said, oh, I don't give a shit. You know, I'm literally like, I can't, whatever. Yeah. Okay. So Florida's getting smacked with COVID. Well, I lived, 30 miles from New York City that got smacked. It's not novel to me.
Yeah. But Jay, your wife just had to cancel a gig because she couldn't go to Arizona because it's right in the red zone. So this is affecting
Steve,
I'm
family. Not saying it's rational at all. I'm just telling. I never said that. I said, in my opinion, from my perspective.
You've emotionally cut you off. Meanwhile, you're like losing income because of this still.
I know, but I'm just. I mean, I think it's just. I'm getting so fatigued.
You're
that I'm
burnt out.
Go ahead, hit me again with a baseball bat. I'm numbed out. My nerves don't respond the same way they did, 4 or 5 months ago. Now I'm just not having the same emotional.
And we're still
reaction.
Canceling our stuff. We're still. Yeah. Not on the other end of we only sort of have a tentative extravaganza date, and it's not really clear if that's going to make happen. And how we're talking about, do we have to push this out to to next year? It's affecting the work that we do too.
But listen, guys. So somebody said, I think Joseph said that have the protests done anything to increase the infections? So based on what I've been seeing this past week, it looks like. If you're outside, I think it shows a stark difference between people gathering outside and inside because they haven't been able to pin a lot of new infections on the protests happening outside because you're outside first of all,
and most of them are wearing masks,
and you're moving.
Yeah, by and large, they've been really protected,
and you're moving. A lot of these spikes are being attributed to people gathering in a place indoors and like bars and restaurants and and staying put.
Why are these places open?
It's bananas.
Well, a lot of them are closing now because of the spike. So to answer that question, I think that the protests have not had any.
Yeah, I've been tracking that as well. There's not much of a signal. There might be a little bump, but so far there isn't a big signal, and they think that's why. It's because it's outside, and people, a percentage of them are wearing masks. However, Trump's rally tomorrow, Trump's big rally indoor. And
Saturday,
a lot of people are like not going to wear masks.
Oh, it is tomorrow, right?
Yeah. Tomorrow. My friend in Texas went to a protest, and she stayed at the very end, and she had a mask and everything, and maintained 6 feet, and then she got tested very soon after that. And I think if you're like that, if I wasn't living with my mom and taking care of her, and I went out, and that's I think what I would do. I'd be for the last person at the very end of that line and just trying to stay away from.
Well, and Bob, remember too that part of what's in the fabric of many of these protests is the community organizing component to it, and the mentality that oftentimes these are people who have been systemically disenfranchised. There's more of a consciousness around a lot of the protests around providing masks if people don't have them, making sure there's plenty of water available, informing people, giving them literature around getting tested. So it's actually built into the kind of structure of the protest to help people with their safety. And I think that's why we're not seeing as much of a spike. Then when you see these gatherings where part of the mentality or the ideology is F masks, we don't want to wear them. Of course you're
the Liberate Minnesota rally, is not going to have the same approach. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oof. Well, I mean, I have to say at the very least, I'm glad the pressure made him take it away from Juneteenth.
Yeah.
But goodness, I mean,
I would be surprised, if we don't see a Tulsa spike, which is terrible, just terrible.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
And of course, like you said, Steve, it's not just Texas, Florida, Arizona, these hotbeds in the South, but globally. We're seeing increases, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's again, it's like it's moving through. Like, the places where it's already passed are on the downswing, but there's other countries that, like Brazil, is going crazy now. I mean, the other countries are taking their place. That's all. But if you look at just the global pandemic, that wave has not completed yet. We're still right in the middle of that first wave, and in fact, as I said, from the numbers that I heard, we just had our worst week of the whole pandemic.
Right, because the whole point of shelter-in-place orders and lockdown was to flatten the curve, which actually makes the curve go longer. So we're in it still. It's not like we had one and now we're in another.
Right.
Yeah, so this is still wave 1.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So there is no wave 2. Like, we didn't get to drop it low enough to consider
wave 2 might be October, November. You know what I mean?
And that's why I was so frustrated, because I tweeted, Mike Pence wrote an editorial in the Wall Street Journal called "There is no second wave," and then like the subtitle was something along the lines of like, the media is making it seem worse than it is. The only reason we're seeing increased numbers is because we've upped our testing capability, which is all
not true.
Total crap.
Which is total crap. We know that that's not true.
We know it's not true. And I even put a note like, this is some 1984 level like BS. Yeah. And all these people responded, which I love, because it's like, oh, my skeptic friends. So many of the responses were like, yeah, because we're still in the first wave. And I'm like, true, but not the point of what he was trying to make in the article. So yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing that they're trying to play that card again, of downplaying the pandemic in the US. It's just amazing. Boy, and that's the guy who's in charge of our pandemic response. Let's not forget that.
Yeah. Fauci said he hasn't talked to the president in 2 or 3 weeks.
Wow. And also it seems like they're not doing anything anymore.
Yeah.
The briefings have dried up. Like, it's kind of feels like business as usual now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What?
Well, he also
try and figure that one out.
Fauci, I think, is more comfortable
human beings being human,
calling it like it is and not worrying if it contradicts Trump. Like, he was asked, would you go to that Tulsa rally? He's like, no way, I would not go. Absolutely not. It's not safe.
And when he testified, he was straight up the whole time. I mean, at a certain point, like, he might lose his job, but at least now he's on, I think, a national stage. So even if he lost his job within the administration in the NIH, I think that he'd still be an expert that people called on, and his voice would be heard. And that's the important point.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right. Anybody else have any other big topics to talk, or should we go on to questions?
Ooh.
Yeah, there's no quiz this week.
So we're actually going to get to questions earlier in the show. I like that.
Yeah, we are going to load test the quiz and try to do some more improvements. Last week, by the way, the error with the problems that we had were that the server, we're learning how to do this, and there was a lot of people that joined last week. The server wasn't completely optimized to handle as many people as we had. So, but we're still working on it, and it's still moving forward. So probably next week.
Hey, Steve.
Yeah.
So I want to show off some of my bookcase stuff. So this is like Steve and I used to collect. Steve and I used to collect pewter figurines, fantasy figurines. So this is one of my premier fantasy figurines that I got that I had for years and years. And
it's encrusted with jewels.
And Steve, as you know, with these pewter figurines, they throw gems all over the place.
Yeah,
right?
I was going to say that.
So the wizard had a gem that I hated. It's like, why? So I took the gem off and I replaced it with this.
Good for you.
With this
a skull,
awesome,
of course.
Of course, a skull.
So,
yeah.
So it just seemed more poignant to have him contemplating a skull in his hand than a lame crystal.
What if you put gems in the skull's eyes?
Yes.
Maybe.
And then little lights behind them.
Maybe.
Lasers or something.
Here's another one. This is a wizard, and you could see, of course, the dragon's got a crystal in his hand. It's just like all over.
That was the thing. It still kind of is, but I like the ones that don't.
That's how they mark up the price, Bob. Right? Let's put a crystal in it. Extra $50. Yeah.
I got a book for Olivia.
2-cent crystal.
Yeah.
Not even.
Quantum Physics for Babies.
Yeah, thank you, Bob.
So I'm gonna be reading that to her.
And me.
Bob, you're getting so much love in the stream right now.
And I got my first book of Girl Power. I'm going to give that to Olivia. And of course, Astrophysics for Babies.
All right, screw all that stuff, Bob.
Hang on.
I want it. Wait, hold on, Steve.
My dragon with the crystal. I have to show my dragon.
Okay, all right.
But actually, this is my favorite fantasy figurine that I got.
I didn't get to see the dragon with the crystal because I was talking over you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This guy.
You can watch the.
Like
the
see that
rebroadcast.
coming at you.
Oh,
What
whoa!
is it?
Oh, yeah.
Wait.
I like that. So I actually wrote, for D&D, right? I actually wrote a monster around this figure in real size, like so it's proportional to like the
3 hit points.
It's
1
definitely
damage.
a demon. Looks like a demon
it's
to me.
nasty. I don't know if you could really see the detail there.
Oh, I thought you meant to scale that it's actually okay. You're talking how large is this thing, Steve? If you were to encounter it.
No, it's huge. I mean, it is to scale because most like the people figurines are tiny.
Thank you.
This would
That's
be
what we want to see. We want to see a person.
like
It's almost a dragon.
15 feet
Bigger than a
tall,
person.
something like that. 10, 15 feet tall.
Oh, that's like that rhinoceros that got a prehistoric rhinoceros that got up on its back legs, 3 stories tall.
It has it's a little fishy. Like I think
Remember
it
that?
has. It does have crystals in it.
Like it has scales, like
Yeah, it has
fishy,
scales.
like fish-like.
Yeah,
Oh.
It also has a
gills and
crystal at the
scales.
top of its weapon.
more menacing that way.
Anyway,
And it uses advanced tools, so it's very.
This is one of my
sophisticated.
favorite books. If there's a fire in the house, this may be one of the books that I need to grab.
Charlotte's
This is a
Web?
copy of Charlotte's Web,
Yeah.
the best copy that I've ever seen. It's just like it's just a beautiful copy. I think this was printed in the 50s. I think Grandpa might have owned this. It's got an awesome web inside.
That's the one we had when we were kids, Bob.
Yeah, I found this in the basement and I took it. This has been mine for decades.
No, but that was always your favorite book.
Oh yeah, I read it 14 times growing up. Here, I got
Aw.
this statue. I got this carving in Jamaica. I've always just loved this so much. It's
Yeah,
just-
I love that one.
Oh
When
my
did you
God,
go to
it's such a-
Jamaica?
Oh, in the 80s. I mean, when those
fun.
horribly
In the 80s,
sexist
mom.
movies were coming out.
Yeah.
All right,
Bob,
who can tell me what this is?
That's a thermal detonator.
No.
no.
What? That
grenade?
is. No, this
Oh,
is
droid?
Coke. This is Coke
Cocaine.
from Galaxy's Edge. Galaxy's Edge
Oh,
at Disney World, and the bottle was just so awesome. I was there last year, and
so I've never seen it before.
It just looked too cool. It just looked too. But I mean, it's kind of like a Coke.
Yeah.
Bob, did they have
Future
Coke
Coke.
Zero in those bottles?
Coke Future.
I don't know. Jay.
It will taste good.
What
All right,
else?
my favorite one is the shrunken head or the head that's inside the glass jar.
Yeah, look at that.
Wow, who was he?
That's awesome.
Is that Joaquin Murrieta?
Whoa.
La, 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 la. This is a
So
great.
creepy.
It's Abby Normal.
This is a great head.
What, Carol? You don't have a bunch of shrunken heads under jars in your.
I mean, I have a lot of weird stuff. Like, I could take you guys on a tour of my house. I have a lot of skulls.
All right, get ready for next week, Kara. You'll do that.
Yeah, okay.
Oh yeah, we'll do like they used to do what MTV Cribs or something.
Right,
Walk
like
around the
this is where
house.
the magic happens.
Yeah, this is where the-
With a magic happens.
Hey,
Yo,
hey, look at this. I got this at Dragon Con a couple years ago. Do you know what this is?
is it
recorder.
lightsabers?
It looks like it's some techno staff, right?
Yeah.
And I wasn't even sure what it was, but then I realized.
thermometer.
It's a sword.
Whoa,
it's two
hold on.
swords.
It's too
blade.
sore.
And then you could screw it together, and you've got like a double-ended blade.
Oh,
So
wow.
if anybody comes in this house, I'm gonna grab this, and I'll grab my metal nunchucks,
That'll work.
and
Hey,
you're
Bob.
gonna be,
Bob,
and you're
you
gonna
need
be in trouble.
specialized training to use this thing.
Bob, I
Nah.
was at that Dragon Con with you, and not only did you not tell me you bought, like, why am I finding out about this purchase a year after it happened? Like, what is going on here?
I've had it for a couple years, dude. I
an
told
idiot.
you just forgot. You just forgot. There's
Probably.
no way I wouldn't show you that, Jay.
All right,
Some people
questions.
talking about
What?
Killer, and he's sleeping.
What?
Killer.
What
called it?
What say you?
Space flute. Somebody called it a space flute.
Come here.
I called it a recorder.
Ian, do we have any questions?
Yeah, we have a couple. So this one comes from Discord. Have the Rogues ever watched Red Dwarf? And then have the Rogues ever played Mass Effect?
I'm
no
going
one
to take
know
a
for
break
me,
because
sorry.
I don't know how to answer those questions.
Yeah.
Yes, I've played Mass
I just
Effect.
answered it for you, Kara. No one know.
I've
she's
watched a bunch of Red Dwarf.
I played all the Mass Effects except the last
It
one.
seems okay.
I
Yeah,
watched
very
very,
different
very
shows.
few of the Red Dwarf. I never watched the whole season.
I'm not hearing a lot of excitement.
Mass
Yeah, somebody
Effect.
did. We watched a bunch of episodes, right?
Mass Effect is one of the best games ever made, in my opinion.
Okay. All right. That's
You've seen every episode.
there's something to okay.
Yeah, I mean, it has like the scaling, path where what you do will change what options are available to you in the future. The character development is amazing. And you love all the characters. All the characters are charming in their own way. The battle, the combat is great. I love it. I mean, I think that the controls for games that are being made today are better, because I found the controlling a little, little rough around the edges, but it's a great game. I mean, I highly recommend 1 and 2.
Okay.
I don't play games.
You just love killer.
You don't play video games, but you play head games.
I play poker.
Yeah.
I play poker.
And
so
Kara's good
long.
at it
Shuffle
too.
them up and deal.
I miss having a poker table, man. That's going to be one of the first things I do when I get vaccinated.
My old high school buddies started an online poker game that happens once a month, so I've joined that. It's really cool to catch up with them. Yeah,
Texas
a lot of
Hold'em.
fun.
I think it'd be cool to do like, is it like an online digital kind of like well-controlled poker thing, but you also have like, are like zooming in somehow?
Yes. So I'll send you the link on it, Kara, so you
okay.
can see it. And you can buy like $20 worth of chips that gets you like, I don't know, 500,000, play chips and stuff. So that's how it works. So you just, it's low cost and you can play for a long time.
I play
because the thing about online is you're not together, but if there's a video portion to it, then you're actually playing together.
I'll send you the link.
I play Texas Hold'em in Red Dead Redemption 2, so you get to play with in-game money. So there are stakes, but it's in-game money, and it's with you're playing against people, other players.
Yeah.
How well do you do in that game, Steve?
Pretty well. I've done pretty well. There are, because it's obviously anybody could play, and there's probably a lot of kids there. You can always tell like there are some crazy players. Just
crazy players make it harder to be good.
It does. It can make it challenging, but once you get a feel for what they're doing, you realize, right, that guy will max out any hand. Like I don't care.
Then you can just take all his money.
Yeah.
I sat down at a poker table once. It was the first time I sat down at a real pay to play poker tournament. I don't know, it was like $100 to get in or something. I sat next to a guy who was obviously extremely serious about the whole thing. I bid unconventionally, and he was very upset with me that I was not sticking to certain conventions, and I got him quite frustrated as a result. And I was only
beginner's luck. Like when people don't know how to play, they'll be in hands they should never be in, and so they'll suck out constantly, or they'll lose a lot. But it's frustrating for somebody who's like playing the game like you're supposed to play.
Right. So my inexperience, threw everyone else, well, at least that guy off at the table.
But that keeps it interesting, honestly.
It was fun. It was fascinating to watch, actually. And I was really trying my best, but I just, didn't have my poker chops at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ian.
Next question. Okay. This is a question here. It is, have you been following the Monsanto Roundup lawsuits, and do you have any comments? I read that there may be some sort of verbal agreement to settle 50,000 cases for an astonishing amount of money.
Well, I see commercials for it all the time.
Yeah.
Join the class action lawsuit.
I haven't checked in a couple weeks. I don't know if there's a recent update, but I've been following it off and on. Honestly, I think it's total nonsense scientifically, that it's based mainly on the idea that exposure can increase your risk of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. But the evidence is not there. I think it's one of those cases that you're going to look back in 10 years, 20 years, and this, when the science is more sort of tied in a bow, and you will realize it was all complete nonsense. Just like looking back at the silicone, breast implants and autoimmune disease literature.
What about Johnson & Johnson, the talc?
Yeah, the talc thing, although that was still a little equivocal, but at the end of the day, there really wasn't much there. Like once we finally did here are the systematic reviews of all the evidence. Nope, there was no connection between. And if you go back even further, like in the 40s and 50s, they thought that minor trauma would cause cancer. So this person bumped my breast and now I have breast cancer. And then there were multiple successful lawsuits based upon that until we proved that it wasn't true. They're like, oh, never mind. But they didn't give all their money back. But So yeah, these I think are mainly politically motivated, to be honest with you.
When you're working in an industry that either makes drugs or that makes uses like synthetic chemicals that could end up in water supplies and things like that, I think it's part of the cost of doing business. That there is going to be a certain amount of settlement that they make with the general public. It's sad when it's something that actually does have an effect, like the conversations about, like, I don't know if you guys have read Tom's River. But it's about, I think it's about Dow. No, it was a dye plant in Tom's River, New Jersey, and an uptick in like brain cancer. But it showed how difficult it is to actually show epidemiological effects when your sample size is so small. But in these kinds of situations, it's interesting where there'll be a situation where there's no effect or, statistically insignificant effect, and there'll be a massive payout. And then there's these situations where there's clear evidence that they just can't get the legal, I don't know why there are so many barriers, but unfortunately,
it's kind of broken both ways.
Yeah,
it's sad. And the terrible thing is, that if this leads to like banning of glyphosate, that will lead to more toxicity because the things that will replace it are worse than glyphosate. Glyphosate is actually a fairly benign chemical, all things considered, compared to the alternative. And it's not like we just like will stop using, pesticides, because then we won't be able to feed the world, if we do that.
And I mean, hopefully, companies like Dow and Monsanto and like some of these maybe smaller companies that are coming up are working on developing a next generation version that maybe is even shows even lower toxicity or shows like more inertness or whatever, but it takes time. It's expensive.
So I think the practical question here is, you feel that it's safe to use, should you still be covering your skin and not letting it touch your skin?
What do you mean?
Wait, you mean like a consumer or a farmer?
Yeah,
so consumer.
For the consumer,
we're fine.
It's fine. Yeah, it's like the whatever trace amounts that might still be in whatever food you eat are orders of magnitude lower than safe limits. But if you're like using gallons of this stuff, of course you need to protect yourself from it. And that's really where the only issue is protecting workers from industrial level exposure. But that doesn't.
What about
it's all about the dose. Stuff? That's orders and orders of magnitude more of exposure. It doesn't tell you anything about like buying produce at the store.
Oh, so Jay, you're talking about like a bottle of Roundup to kill the weeds on your property.
with the trigger and
don't drink it. Like, just wash your hands after
don't drink
you
the stuff.
it.
Just like any chemicals you use around your house, don't get exposed to them. Don't rub it on your skin or drink it.
Is it true, Steve, if I do drink it, if I washed it down with vodka, that's
Here we
okay?
Go.
Yeah, no, don't do that.
Read the poison control on the back
checking.
of the bottle.
You never know. Got to ask.
Yeah, that'll be called the last Roundup, Jay.
If you have Roundup in your house, you probably have a dozen more toxic chemicals in your kitchen and your house than that. That's not the dangerous thing in your house.
But I mean, there's always going to be risks, so don't be stupid. Like, read the instructions on any industrial chemical that you're going to use and follow the safety protocol. And if you do ingest it on accident, look at what the poison control listing says.
Now, is it true if you rub Windex on your shoulder that it'll help you with an achy shoulder?
So we're going to move on to the next question.
I heard an angel gets its wings.
People do that, Evan. I didn't make that up.
Hey,
don't drink bleach. Go ahead.
Okay, next question. Somebody was asking, what happened to 5x5?
We finished. Its course. Yeah, it finished. We did.
So seriously,
that covered everything.
Pre-Kara.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, so
we covered.
We did it. Here's the very brief 5x5 story.
Well, tell people what it is who don't know.
So it is a brief. The idea was just 5 minutes with 5 skeptics, right?
Yeah.
But it was between 5 and 10 minutes, single topic, very brief podcast.
It's 5 minutes plus.
Yeah, well, we didn't worry about hitting 5 minutes exactly. But what we can say, 5 to 10 by 5. It doesn't not as snappy as 5 by
5.
So, anyway, and 5 by 5, has another meaning. That is a reference to another. You ever heard that term?
Yeah,
5 by 5?
A-OK. Everything's A-OK.
Yeah, everything is 5 by 5. I tried at one point. I tried to find out what the etymology of that was, and I could not find the
It's
answer.
all over the place. Yeah.
If somebody knows the
Alien
precise
2, right?
answer to that question, I'd like to know.
Yeah.
But anyway,
You're right, Evan.
I don't think
Alien 2,
anybody
they
does.
reference
I thought
it.
the military came up with it, but
yeah,
I could be
it
wrong.
sounds like a military.
It sounds very military.
But I couldn't find like exactly what the literal original meaning was. But anyway,
we took it.
so it was. We did over 100 episodes, and
Wow.
so there were two reasons why we stopped. One was we covered kind of all the stuff we wanted to cover, like a lot of the logical fallacies, a lot of the basics. But also we did it as an experiment to see like what would happen if we did a really short format podcast, because we are a really long format podcast. And we got about 10 to 15% of the downloads that we were getting for the regular show. So it didn't seem worth continuing to do it. And there's actually a third reason that we sort of let it fade, because that's the same time that we were starting our membership. And so we put out premium content. So we basically said, instead of doing this, we're going to put out premium content for our membership.
Yeah.
Yep.
And because it's kind of a zero-sum game. We only have so
yeah.
much time to do post-production. And then also, I don't know I forget exactly when this happened, but Mike LaSalle was doing the post-production on that for us for a while, and he passed away, so he wasn't there around to do it anymore either. So a lot of things sort of were in there, but it was mainly that it just ran its course and it wasn't taking off on its own right, so there wasn't much of a reason to continue it.
So Steve, the chat, a lot of people said 5x5 refers to the strength and the clarity of a radio signal. So
Loud
on a scale
and clear?
of 1 to 5, if it's a 5x5, it's loud and clear.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Loud and clear. That's even better for the podcast.
Yeah. And also people are asking, is there a place where they can find all of them at once? Like, can we put them on the website in a specific place, or are they already there?
They exist somewhere, right?
They're still on our media server. They're on Libsyn.
And people can access it.
So if you
how?
search, wait,
There's
Ian?
there's a technical issue with that, but we're gonna maybe put it on YouTube, or we'll figure out something. And we
should just make it available.
So you still have the source files?
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Steve, quick question, Steve.
I didn't inhale sharply.
If you buy our
add that to
USB
your
drives,
list?
they are on the USB drives, the SGU USB.
Very good. Yes.
Yay. Okay,
Yes,
so that's one
right.
place you could get them now.
And to make this perfectly clear, we will not ever ship those. Shipping and the SGU have parted ways. There's no more shipping. The only shit.
Well, those we
that's
sell
not
at live
perfectly
events.
clear.
Those we sell.
Hey,
at live
I'm not done
events.
talking.
That's not
I'm not
5
done
by 5,
talking.
Jay.
We will use print on demand services, but
And those services ship.
Ian and I,
Yes. So the
and my
merch site
wife
does
are
ship.
no longer going to get together and have shipping extravaganzas where we package and ship hundreds of packages. Forget it.
He means the book. He means
Forget it.
specifically the book.
Yeah,
He means
I owe our
yeah,
patrons
the
a
book.
round of books. Certain patrons are owed a book. They're going to get it as soon as I get to it. And that's it. No more.
This is, I did the same thing for Talk Nerdy a while back. I was like, I can't hold on to all this inventory, dedicate like weekend days to doing. Like, it's so much easier to just send it off to the print on demand.
This
a
is
lot
why
of the print on demands are behind right now because of COVID, though. So
Yeah.
there is a delay with that too.
I've worked at two different companies that were, had professional shipping facilities in their warehouse. And when I started to get into doing shipments for the SGU, I remember it occurred to me, oh yeah, this is why they have a scale there and a table. And this is why they have the cellophane thing from the ceiling. It's like you need the infrastructure to actually do it to scale. And when you try to do something to scale where you're doing it on the rug in your living room, forget about it. It just it's
I
a train
remember going
wreck.
to Steve's house and just seeing all these shirts stuffed in the closet.
Yeah, forget it. It's a train wreck.
That was like your inventory. No,
Yeah,
that's too
Somebody
much.
just said they need an SGU hoodie. Remember that? I still have it. I still
Jay,
have it.
what's the
somewhere I
status
still have
of
it.
the SGU print on demand store?
It's up and
It's
running, but
We
it's
just
not.
have to
it's-
make more.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
just have more. We have to put more artwork up there, but it's not a fantastically high priority because of all the other stuff we have going on. I mean, I went from the planning the extravaganza, then we switched over to Nexus 2020. What? Yeah. I'm just a man. I'm just one.
Why don't
man.
we poll the chat real quick? What does everybody want? What do you want to see?
Here we go.
Other than mankinis, no mankinis.
Is honestly, it's not that hard to make lots of things because we don't have to make them.
SGU masks, good idea.
Mm-hmm. So I think, are we using the same company that I use?
We're using Printful.
Yeah, so Printful doesn't do printed masks yet. They have plain black masks that they're offering, and they're working on the capacity to do screen printing on the masks.
Yeah, there's another.
I think we still have a Cafe Press account.
We have SGU pens.
Mugs.
Of course, we have we have more T-shirts than you can possibly imagine.
Well, but you say that, Jay, but right now on the website you can only buy 2 T-shirts. That's the only thing available.
That's right. I know. We have mugs are part of that. We just need the artwork that.
Yeah. So mugs, hoodies,
coins,
T-shirts,
coins,
tank tops. Printful's not going to do coins, so that's going to be more of a special event.
That's something we have for our live events.
Think about things like they do
underwear.
They do underwear. They do bathing suits.
SGU meatballs. Anybody that wants my meatball recipe, just email me at info@theskepticsguide. So here's a quickie meatball situation.
Phone covers.
Multiple people have asked for it and got it and done it and have been blown away. So trust me, you're going to love my meatballs.
In a good way.
Did we get an email from Meat Leg this week?
Yes, we did.
Did we?
Needle G wrote us.
Needle G. Awesome. Now we were just talking about him the other day.
I had to respond to him, but yes, he did. When I saw it, I just started laughing. I'm like, it's Meat Leg.
I love it.
Somebody wants an SGU coffee. Now that is a cool idea. SGU branded coffee.
Jay's Blend.
Karam, when you say keep my meatballs, you need to explain.
What?
Yeah, somebody said keep your meatballs. I don't know if that's a negative comment.
Well, because you were kind of like, if anybody wants my meatballs
Karam
recipe.
I said recipe.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a delay.
Hey. I am a meatball, Russell. Thank you. All right, anyway. I would like to know, here's an important question. If I do lovingly pick a SGU coffee mug, I like 20-ounce mugs. What size mugs do people like?
They don't offer 20-ounce on.
Then I don't like Printful. That's a shame.
On. The end. It's out.
That's a breaker.
They have 11-ounce and 15-ounce, but they have a new mug style where it's like black and you print the thing. And then when you fill it with the hot liquid, it magically removes the black and you have the image underneath it.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Somebody said they want their coffee jug size.
Somebody said they want a Meat Leg t-shirt. We should talk to Meat Leg.
That is awesome.
Leg t-shirt.
SGU coffins. I like that one.
SGU coffins.
You mean like you want to be buried in an SGU coffin? Is that what they mean? They mean like a casket? I want to spend eternity?
No.
Or is it a typo or an autocorrect?
Did you know that the band Kiss has a Kiss branded coffin? They used to sell Kiss branded coffins.
That's wow. Morbidly genius.
Yeah.
Steve,
Gene Simmons, man.
Steve, somebody's asking questions about books. I have a question for you. Did you keep any of the books you read to your daughters when they were really little?
Yes. And
I did too.
A lot we gave to Jay.
Yeah.
Jay's at the end of the line, so he got all the shit stopped there.
He got everything was all beat up by the time he made
it. Yeah, it is.
And I still have some upstairs. Still have some upstairs.
I used to read actually Halloween books, of course, every October. And here's my favorite.
Every March. What are you kidding?
Cinderella Skeleton. Highly recommended. What do you call a rhyming scheme that is A, B, B, C, C, A? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
I don't remember.
It was an awesome story, a fantastic, creepy riff on Cinderella. She loved this. A Pirate's Life for Me, great book. But really about the real life, what things that pirates really did. Good Night Goon instead of Good Night Moon. And then one of my favorites, we did pop-ups. The Door Under the Stairs, and it's got all these little pop-up things.
I think they're gonna sue J.K. Rowling for that one.
Hey, to everybody, sorry, little self-promotion, but to everybody who's watching and who is like obsessing over Killer right now and also happens to want merch, I have Killer merch at Talk Nation.
Killer merch.
Holy crap!
I have like Killer mugs and T-shirts and sweatshirts.
Killer as in
stuff.
dog related.
It's really cute. It says Killer the Science Dog, and it's like a really beautiful drawing that an artist made for me. So if anybody wants Killer the Science Dog on their shirt, you can actually buy that
the Science Dog.
Yeah, in a quick search, Bob, I'm not finding anything that has that pattern, but I'd have to look into it deeper.
Oh, here, I'll link to you guys. Actually, Ian, I'm going to give you something. Do you mind adding it?
We're looking at Bob Cam right now.
Oh, really cool.
Yeah, we got to put AQ6 merch on the site too, Jay.
Yeah.
Yep, I know. Right now, me and Ian are running a digital conference, so back up a little, please.
Right. Yes. But Ian and Jay, if you guys want help with this, I did my whole store myself, so I can help you guys out.
How much work are you willing to do?
Depends.
Kara, we'll talk.
But you know what? I already developed a full SGU system, so you can borrow my SGU system.
SGU, yeah, let's SGU it up.
You
love it, yes. Thank you, Kara. Yeah, no, I appreciate the help because I'm multitasking, as everybody knows, doesn't exist. I'm actually negative multitasker. I have to focus, and if I have 15 things to do, I get a little crazy. But good news about Nexus, as far as everything. Like I have let me see this. Ian does not want me to do this, but I'm doing it.
What are you doing?
You know what I'm doing.
Whatever it is, he doesn't want you doing it.
I have a picture of Ian.
A picture of Ian.
This is us testing the green screen.
No. I refuse. No. I will mute everything.
We have.
He'll go full pirate.
We're experimenting with different digital backgrounds and stuff just to see what works, what won't make your eyes freak out. And my eyes is going crazy. So things are going very well. We really hope that you can join us this year, of course. So go to nexus.org, necss.org, if you guys would like to come. So the conference this year, as I say on the show, Friday night, July 31st, we're going to be doing a game show, which is going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a really good time. Like the game show is going to have some very surprising things in it that you will be very pleased with once you see what's going on.
Yay.
Yep, we got Bill Nye on there. We got Leanne Lord, and we got Andrea Jones Roy. Thank you. And Saturday, we have a whole SHIT load of people that are going to be talking for us in a good way. The shitload could be bad and a shitload could be good. We have a lot of great speakers. Just go to the website, take a look. The schedule is expanding. I'm looking forward to a bit that George is going to do about Ringo Starr. He's giving a talk about Ringo Starr. He was one of the Beatles. One of the Beatles, yeah. So that should be a lot of fun.
And Leanne's going to do a comedy set during the day on Saturday.
Cool. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right, Kappa.
That's right, Kappa. Here's another picture of a non-Ian picture of the setup. Just, cool. Like that's our quickie, non-dressed, just like making the technology work. It's not meant to look pretty yet. So we have been talking about COVID-19 and its impact on the SGU's schedule. So Dragon Con is on the list of potential things that are going to go bye-bye. If not, we've kind of decided that it's probably not a good idea for us to do this at this point. It doesn't look like things are going to go in the right direction fast enough. So the other thing was the extravaganza that we rescheduled for October. Now the promoters and the venues are starting to communicate back saying that they're thinking we need to reschedule. So if we do any rescheduling of these two events, and if you've paid for tickets or were thinking about going to these events, we'll put a formal notice up on not this Saturday, but the following Saturday. So a week from Saturday on the show, you'll hear us give the final word on everything, but it's not looking good.
As in a week from tomorrow.
Yeah.
A week from tomorrow. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't want people to put themselves in danger. I mean, Dragon Con, man, talk about we joke around a lot about con crud. You get sick when you go to a conference. That the crud this year will be the coronavirus.
Nerd plague, but this year, like nerd plague on steroids.
Yeah, so it's just not a smart thing to do.
Steroids helped.
Right, you're right. Dang it, it's nerd plague on
jet fuel.
Nerd plague on.
Did you guys hear
on metachlorians?
Extra plague, yeah.
Midichlorians.
So what's going on with Dragon Con is the state of Georgia is not passing a law that's helping companies that have planned conferences get out of the conferences, right?
Well, they're not banning mass gatherings. So
that's the problem. But Dragon Con has 100,000 people in attendance, it's a it could be a half a billion dollars worth of income.
Yeah, they probably already invested so much money, so they're really screwed.
Yeah, so Dragon Con said they didn't. I don't remember if they formally said this, but what the problem is Dragon Con is going to possibly go bankrupt if they don't have the conference this year because they can't get out of their contracts.
It's too bad
because the state won't cancel it.
Won't ban the conferences.
So it sucks. Dragon Con is an amazing conference. So, we're all trying to figure out what to do, but we just don't think it's a good idea to go. I don't want to do anything to hurt Dragon Con, but you got to take care of yourself. And, you don't want to be in a bunch of hotels with even 5,000 people, let alone 100,000 people.
Yeah, I mean, we may get to a point where eventually we can work with the venues to do a live show where people wear masks and they're socially distant, before vaccines, where people, eventually we're separate, we're on the stage. And I think there might be a way to do this safely in the future, but with a large conference where there's just so many people, you cannot socially distance at Dragon Con. It's impossible.
Not when everyone's there, not the way it's been organized in the past.
Right, it kind of defeats the purpose.
Evan, before we go on to another question, tell us about your puzzle.
Okay. The whiteboard challenge this week, folks.
So I have to say that looks very familiar, but I just can't place it.
Okay.
Micro penis?
Well, let's okay.
A border? It looks
you're on the right track. You're certainly on the right track. Jay, any thoughts about what that is?
I mean, at first when I saw it, it looked like a dock. Like if the water was on the right. But the thing that squiggle at the top looks like a heartbeat form, a waveform.
Interesting.
And I think that is possible, but that
Steve's like, no, it doesn't.
Hey, come on. I'm not a doctor for crying.
But he stayed in a Holiday Inn.
But I don't know. There's too many things. Like it's too
okay.
Perfect.
How about I give you a little hint?
Okay.
Is there anything about the angle at which this is drawn that might?
Yes, COVID instances.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
The angle.
No. The angle,
as opposed, we got, 0 degrees, maybe kind of whatever that degree might be.
50 degrees or something.
Not quite 50. No. I made it as close to 23.5 as I could reasonably do.
The Earth, the tilt of the Earth, something about that?
Tilt of the Earth, you're onto it, Bob. Okay, so now we've got the tilt of the Earth. We're looking at some kind of line associated with the Earth. I'll tell you, here's another hint. We've all been there multiple times.
So it's not the Mariana Trench.
All of us here. No, but you're thinking in the right kind of idea.
Precession of the equinoxes?
No, not that.
Because is this the surface of the Earth now? And this is like a geographic relief.
How about this? Here's another hint. It has to do with time.
The International Dateline.
International Dateline. That is the International Dateline.
Cool.
Yeah.
And
expressed as you would see it on a map, but I decided to give it a little tilt as a potential clue for people. And and there were correct guesses. Our friends at the Team Discord puzzled it all together. A shout out to Silac. And Screw Loose together came up with that. And that's why it looked familiar to you.
Yeah, Steve. I have seen that before. Yeah.
We all have.
Cool one, Evan. Hey,
Elegant.
Guys. Yeah. Steve and Jay, do you remember? Look what I pilfered from Dad's bookcase.
Oh, absolutely.
This is the Leonardo da Vinci book. This thing is a monster. Look at over 500 pages. We've had this in our house for
in that book.
4 decades. I remember going through this when I was a little.
It's definitely a novella artifact. Yeah.
Right. So this is now in my bookcase, and my dad used to collect hundreds of recipe books. He's got so many recipe books, and then he'd say, "Bob, here, print me this," and I'd print recipes for him. So I found this in his bookcase. Dom DeLuise, eat this. It'll make you feel better. This is like the classic, quintessential dad recipe book. Because we love Dom DeLuise. We love the movie Fatso, and it's just encapsulizes.
Encapsulizes. I'm adding that to the list.
Write that one down. Right there. Encapsulates.
Encapsulizes.
I'm the encapsulizer.
Epitomize. What was that? Epitomize and encapsulate.
And encapsulates.
I love it. So that was his character in the movie Fatso, where he he would eat to feel better. And when I saw this book in his bookcase, I'm like, that's totally mine. Encapsulizes. I love it.
Do you guys want some?
Stayed off that list for quite a while.
I know I haven't had to add anything lately, but do you guys want a little refresher of some of the words that are on the list?
Do it.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
All right, right now it has 35 words, which means I've probably missed some.
The SGU lexicon. Okay,
we'll go all the way back to the beginning. So some of these are just things that we always say that I don't think you could even point to who started them. But like testicles is a very common thing we say when we're testing our audio levels. Geothermical, that's J. Infectious.
Yeah,
infectious.
Of course, we all say pedantic, and there's an etymology to that.
That's a classic.
Steve, one time you said zada nip, and I don't even know what that refers to.
Not a zip.
Not a zip. You said
Not
zada
a
nip.
zip.
Zada
Wait,
nip.
nice.
Zada nip. Steve referred to preferred nuts. I'm not sure what that was. Jay, you said senescent instead of senescent.
Senescent.
Yes.
Jay, how do you say the dinosaur that has
Here we go.
the thing that's like a horn, like a physical
a
like
a parasophic parasophilis.
That's amazing. I wrote Parasophilus. That's how you always miss
Parasaurolophus.
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 Somebody
Evan,
said I'm a meatballologist. I love that.
Remember when we were talking about tonsil stones and you couldn't remember what they were called? You called them lung clams.
And Jay, what about Dylan? Jay, Dylan and physicist?
Fizzle sticks?
Physicist.
Physicist. That's one of my favorites.
Let me see. Let me find some Steve ones in here because he has a few. He's got co-orbital.
Co-orbital.
Yeah, somebody put that there.
He's got fictitious.
Yes. Oh man, you've been saying that for a long time.
Fictilious. That's Simpsons, isn't it?
That's Simpsons. Yeah.
Let's see. We've got
Parasnuffleupagus.
Steve. There's a lot of J in here.
Yes, of course.
Jay's overrepresented.
Kara, was that my first one?
No, Bob, you've got a few. You've got just recently when you were talking about brains predicting the future, you said that was fictition. You talked about how hand sanitizer myrtleizes COVID-19.
Oh, myrtleizes. That's a long-standing...
That's a Bugs Bunny?
That's a Bugs Bunny reference, I think.
Yeah, that's a Bugs Bunny.
You talked about... You were trying to think of what mosquito nets were called, and you called them fly curtains.
Fly curtains, yeah.
Who did that?
What's wrong with that?
That's Bob.
And here's what you've done multiple times. She hit the nail on the button.
Yeah, I hit the nail on the button.
So
the old mixed metaphor.
Stuff like a house of cards on fire.
I love that you keep this list, Kara. It's so funny because we spend so much time like talking to each other in a professional way. You know, like we're trying to record the show and then somebody will trip up on themselves and then everybody just immediately starts laughing at them, you know?
It's so good. And when you guys remind me, that's when I write it down. I only have 3 on this list, probably because I'm biased. I'm the one keeping it. But I have, let me see, familiatory. Don't know what that is. Decorine. I was talking about decorating for Halloween, and I said decorine.
Nothing wrong with that. Portmanteau, right?
And then I referred to, and then I said examinator.
Examinator.
Examiner is the examinator.
Examinator.
I'm here to examine you.
Examinator. Yeah, there's some really good ones in here. Oh man!
Come with me if you want to be examined.
Evan, you talked about citating something.
Citating, yeah.
Citated.
That one almost sounds real.
It almost says, Jay, I don't know what squience is. Oh, squience?
Acquiescence, maybe?
Maybe. Fraudulating data. Jay, you have some really good ones. You talked about a comeroid. The comet asteroid.
Comet and a hemorrhoid.
That's when you get hemorrhoids a lot. I have a comeroid.
Oh, vaccinine.
It's a cream you rub in after your vaccine.
It's like those old. Do you remember when Colbert used to do his cheating death with Dr. Stephen T. Colbert, DFA? And he would. It was so funny. You guys Google these old cheating deaths. He would always talk about the company was called like Versamax or something like that, and it always had horrible side effects. And it was it would have side effects like I don't know, like skin funyuns and like weird, like exploding eyeball. But he was funny. Monsters. I'm not funny.
Brain cloud.
Google them; they're great.
All right, do we want to take another question?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some more time.
Okay, this one's been popping up before. There's a weight loss program called Noom, which is supposed to be psychology based. Do you guys know anything about it?
I've actually used Noom.
Oh, well, there you go.
Tell us about it, Kara.
Subscribed to it. I think it did help. I mean, it's in a lot of clinical it's in a lot of studies, so they actually have like a good body of literature around it. And it's it's an app that you would download, and the idea there is about understanding the behavioral challenges that people have with food and looking at them in a really, really personalized way. So basically, if you tend to overeat because it's actually linked to depression, or if you tend to overeat because you have a hard time quantifying serving sizes, or
what if you're just hungry?
Or if you're, and why are you more hungry than the calories that you need? Like, where is that coming from? So they talk about things like fog eating and not knowing when to stop when you're full. So for different people, the cool thing about it that I did like, and I mean, it did work for me when I was doing it. That's the problem with most weight loss, right? It works while you stick with it.
Sure.
But the thing that I did like about it is that it was all about debunking myths. So it would be like, it would be like, what do you think and it did a lot of quizzes to reinforce what you know, so that you would keep being asked the same questions in different ways until you could show that you'd like internalize the information. But it would ask lots of things like, is it better for you to eat 3 meals a day? Or is breakfast the most important meal of the day? And it would be like, well, how do you like to eat? How can we work with what you do? What makes sense to your body? When are you most hungry? Yeah. So it would help you develop a plan for, I only like breakfast and dinner. I like to skip lunch. Okay, well, this is how we can do it, and do it safely and smartly, instead of trying to change your entire approach to food and fit some sort of model that would never work for you. So that was kind of nice.
Cool. That sounds all reasonable.
Yeah, it is. It's like a whole board of psychologists that developed it, and then they keep up with modern literature. They cite studies in it a lot and stuff. So it's kind of like, it's a little bit more like weight loss for skeptical, thinky people. Yeah, so it's worth a try.
Yeah, unfortunately for me, as I grow older, I'm in this whole, like, I really like to overeat. Mm-hmm. I like feeling really full. And it just feels great. And George Robb calls it the hug from the inside.
Yeah.
It just feels great.
Yeah. I think the thing that I did like about Noom, that obviously other approaches would help with, is kind of like a twofold approach to eating, which was mindfulness and accountability. So it was just actually thinking about what you're eating. And it didn't ever say like, don't eat this, or make sure you don't. It was like, if you're going to eat an extra piece of cake, think about why you want to eat it and really enjoy it while you're eating it. Like actually be in the moment while you eat it and understand.
Sorry, I'm busy watching the latest TV show. And,
right, exactly, because that's a big problem for a lot. They don't even realize they're consuming the calories. Yeah,
definitely take your time. Our family tends to inhale food very fast, and you got to slow down and enjoy it.
And that's the thing too. Like, if you're going to do these things that I think bring us all a lot of joy, if you don't even get anything positive out of it, that's a bummer. If it's only harming you personally, if you only feel bad about yourself after, or you only feel like it's risking your health, that's obviously not where you want to be. So it helps you grapple with some of those things and make healthy choices, but also feel good about yourself. A lot of it's also body image issues, because it's mostly developed for women, although I do think a lot of men probably use it.
Kara, the sad fact is that you're going to have to feel hungry to lose weight.
It's true, because you have to restrict your calories. It's the only way to do it.
Especially if you're just used to gorging and eating like that. You got to go to bed hungry.
The good news is, though, that hunger feeling does change over time as you adjust your caloric intake, because a lot of things happen, right? You're actually inducing a lot of hormonal changes, and over time, I mean, it depends, right? If your restriction is massive, that's different. But if you're dropping from, let's say, 2,000 calories a day to 1,600 calories a day, you're going to feel hungry, but eventually 1,600 calories is going to be the norm for you.
Yeah.
You're going to get used to it, and you won't feel as hungry.
Yeah, make sure you're hydrated because your body can confuse thirst and hunger.
Yeah, they talk about that a lot too.
Another option.
Your sound is terrible, Bob.
Bob, you lost your mic.
Terrible.
Really?
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
So hold on to that
Still
thought.
terrible?
No, it's better.
No.
Well,
I think maybe you're too far away.
wrong microphone.
Yeah, it might have been too far away. Another
Oh, yeah, it's the wrong mic, but
Wrong
that's all right.
mic.
We can still hear you.
He's changing.
All right, we'll ask another question. So somebody was asking if the Dunning-Kruger effect is still holding up. They heard that it recently won an Ig Nobel award.
Why?
Yeah,
So,
no idea.
it totally 100% is holding up. The Ig Nobel Award is for science that makes you laugh and then makes you think. The science doesn't have to be bad. It doesn't mean that it's not real or not good science.
Right.
It's just like I remember one study that won an Ig Nobel Award was a perfectly normal, good, solid piece of scientific research, but the title was funny if you're not a medical expert, and it was something like using nitroglycerin to enhance like giving birth, something like that, and. So when he announced it, everyone started laughing, and I'm like, "What is so funny?" Because I hear nitroglycerin and I hear the drug nitroglycerin,
Right.
but people in the audience heard nitroglycerin like the explosive. Right? Yes, Carrie, you didn't even get it, but
no,
people just thought
"Why is that
you're
funny?"
using explosives to help deliver babies. I'm like, no, it's a freaking drug, right? But anyway, that was nothing about the science. It was just funny.
Or like the dead fish experiment. I don't remember if it got an Ig Nobel, but
It
that
did.
would be a good
It
one.
did. The dead fish experiment got an Ig
Because
Nobel.
it was a really important experiment that
Yeah.
showed a lot of problems with fMRI studies, or scanning studies. But yeah, on its surface, it looks like, why are they scanning a dead fish?
Yeah. Right.
Another one.
Yeah.
Let's see. So this one was basically the question is, what makes one person's immune system stronger or weaker than another? It's kind of in the world of COVID. Do we
genetics?
know? I'm sure it's complicated, but are there certain mechanisms?
Yeah, so let me give you a quick answer to that. First, it is massively complicated, and the immune system is still that thing where we think we know what's going to happen, and then the opposite happens. Like this has happened multiple times where we design a drug, or we think that this drug is going to have a certain effect, and then it has a different effect, because we're basically pulling on this massive, kludge. But anyway, so when you say like someone has a quote unquote stronger immune system than someone else, so that could be general or specific, right? It could be, your immune system is primed to a specific thing. That's what vaccines are about, right? That's the memory. So you might have a more robust response to something you have been exposed to previously. And that may make your immune response to COVID or to something specific stronger than somebody else's. But also, there are absolutely tremendous differences in people's immune systems, but there's hundreds of reasons why that could be. It could just be, a genetic alteration of a protein that is more or less active in one person than another. It could be just, how robust their cells are. It could be the bacteria that they have on their mucous membranes. There's just multiple layers to the immune system, and both humoral, physical barriers, bacterial barriers, cellular immunity. It could be that they have an illness that is sapping their immune system. It could be that they're already fighting one illness and that is weakening their immune system against other things. It could be that they're on drugs that are inhibiting the immune system. So there's hundreds of ways that immune activity could be more or less robust.
So is there
There's
anything
no one way.
Said then about, and I think one of the readers made a comment, or one of the viewers made a comment that like it's also kind of a misnomer, or not misnomer, but thinking of the immune system as if it's like just one system where everything is
it's one
is
thing.
Kind of,
yeah,
it's not like your urinary tract, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not like, oh, it goes in this order. But is there anything to say that all things being equal, let's say that, disease free, blah, 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 that two people of the same age, of the same background, blah, blah, that one might have a more robust capability to fight infection?
Absolutely.
Generally?
There's now you're talking about genetic differences.
Yeah.
And we know this for multiple reasons. There are something called HLA typing. You probably know what that is, Kara. where these are genetic differences in immune factors, right?
Okay.
And certain HLA types we know they're more likely to get certain infections. They're more likely to get certain autoimmune diseases, so there absolutely are genetic differences in the risks for anything to do with the immune system, autoimmune disease and also infections.
And are these things like you're genetically more likely to make more white blood cells or to have more T cells or to...
Again, it's like, there's hundreds of factors, that could potentially affect it. But I guess
the problem is we see pseudoscience around, like, take this drug and it'll boost
your immune system. But that's all nonsense, right?
Yeah.
Because it's such a complicated system. There's no simplistic way to make it work better, and it's certainly nothing like nutritional. Again, unless you're treating a deficiency. If you have a deficiency and you're treating that, yes. But once you have enough nutrition to not be deficient or insufficient in something, taking more is unlikely to make your metabolic processes function even better. The thing is, if it was something so simple, we would have evolved it already. You know what I mean? It's like if more antioxidants are my favorite example because we make antioxidants that are 1,000 times more powerful than anything that you eat. And so if a little bit more antioxidants were biologically advantageous, we would have evolved a slightly different balance of our antioxidants in our inherent ones. You know what I mean? One thing that evolution does really well is optimizing a system. New elements to a system there's a chance element, but once you have those elements in place, just optimizing those elements, that's evolution does that pretty quickly and pretty efficiently. So the immune system is absolutely one of those things where it's a balancing act, right? You want it to be strong but not too strong, and because it could obviously cause, you want it just enough inflammation to survive. But you don't want autoimmune. But even if it's not autoimmune, just inflammation's a double-edged sword. As we talked about on the show this week, actually tomorrow, that you'll see that with COVID, a lot of the damage from COVID-19 is coming from not the virus itself, but your inflammatory immune reaction to the virus. And so while your immune system is fighting off infection, it's also damaging you. And that's a delicate balance. And again, there's no simple way to affect that balance to make it better. I think
there is this misunderstanding, right? So what we're often trying to do is get to the place where we're at our healthy baseline.
Yeah.
So that if there's a deficiency or if there's a pathology, we want to try and work on curing or solving it so that we can get back to a healthy baseline. But I think a lot of people misunderstand. Well, if you can be at an unhealthy or deficient place, why can't you be at a more healthy or, a boosted place?
Yeah, but biology doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
It's a complex homeostatic system.
And homeostasis is what we're aiming for, not better than homeostasis.
Right. You can only get worse from homeostasis. There's no super homeostasis, right?
Right.
Steve, what about artificially augmenting our immune systems in the future using?
Yeah, that's different. Yeah.
Right. So what would work, and or maybe what wouldn't work?
So, I mean, certainly vaccines are a way of artificially altering our immune system. That's the most effective way to do it right now. But I could certainly imagine genetically engineered nosocomial bacteria that will line your teeth or your mucous membranes or your gut, and
preventive kind of
be a more effective barrier, crowding out potentially pathogenic things, even killing them directly,
or maybe nano drugs, or
nano fake antibodies.
Yeah, that you can send to the site, or nano white blood, things that can actually attack invaders.
Imagine
genetically engineered cells, or just saying, all right, hey, we're going to give. There's a whole bunch of alleles, that determine your immune system functions. We're going to give you all the ones we know that are better. By doing gene therapy. There's all kinds of theoretical ways, but I would be very careful before I messed with your immune system, man.
Because like you said, in a lot of cases, it can only get worse. A super immune system is actually not better. It's
not
kind of
necessarily a good thing.
when we think about like the people that the small percentage of people that we know that don't feel pain. It's one of those things where we're like, oh, wouldn't it be great to not feel pain? No,
that'd be horrible.
Not good.
No, you don't know. You don't want
gosh.
that. Yeah. Oh wow! Look, I broke my arm yesterday and I didn't even notice. And now I'm
internally bleeding, and I have no idea.
Yeah, that's scary. That's scary. But they actually study people like that though to help people at the other end of the spectrum with like super chronic sensitivity to pain, where even where they everything hurts. So they actually could help. They were trying to have one person help the other person, based on their sensitivity to pain.
I love that kind of paradoxical approach to interesting medical treatments, sort of like we see a lot with like snake venom treatments and things like that. Things that we think of as toxins can actually, in the right dosage and the right control, be very beneficial. And that's kind of right. We talk about this a lot in skepticism. Like anything can be toxic in the right dosage.
Yeah, water.
Yeah.
Water can be. You could die from water overdose.
It's more about quantity than the product itself.
Yeah, but it's not that the water itself. The water is diluting and flushing things out of your system that you need. It's not like the water becomes poisonous, right?
No,
but really, what is poison?
Dose.
What is
all about the dose, man?
Yeah.
Yeah, beware that banana you're eating, all that radiation you're eating.
Well, look at Jay. Look at Botox. Super deadly. But yeah, I'm going to inject it in your forehead. Why? Well, how come that's not a concern? Because the dose is so low, you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. It's also localized.
That's a critical,
not eating it.
That's a critical skeptical concept.
Yeah, don't drink botulinum toxin.
Ooh.
Well, Jay, we just hit 6:30, dude.
I'm waiting. Bob, it was you I was waiting on. You were blah, 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 like, talking, enjoying yourself.
Yeah, right.
All right. So, guys, again, what is this, our 8th, 9th, 10th time? I don't know how many times we've done this, Evan. Don't look for me for this kind of information.
What day is it? I don't even know what day it is.
But we will be here every Friday. Apparently the pandemic is getting worse, according to Steve. And we will be here while this pandemic is changing our lives to provide you guys something to do on Friday night. We really appreciate you guys coming and listening. We had a really good time again this week. I just noticed that you have a skull that is a thing with a light in it, Bob.
Yeah.
I just noticed it. I've been looking at you for an hour and a half, and what the hell's wrong with me? So
I love this dude.
I'd like to. Yes, well, I did. We went over Nexus. Go to nexus.org, necss.org. Please support us, guys. Nexus is there to bring skepticism to people that normally don't get to go out to conventions. We love having new people come to Nexus. We're there to help educate the public. We're there to give you guys entertainment. And this year, it's so easy to support Nexus because it's an online version of the in-person Nexus. All you got to do is go to necss.org. And you will find out all the information there and how to register. And please come because it's going to be a great time this year. And the other thing I'd like to do is thank the people who support the SGU directly, and those are our patrons. Thank you, guys. We really appreciate you helping support us and keeping us liquid enough that we can keep going because we really all want to do this and really do love making the show.
And what's that URL?
The URL is patreon.com/Skeptics Guide. And we'd like to thank you, especially this week, Ian, because you're awesome and you help us. Yeah.
Okay, and also go to theskepticsguide.org/shop for all your merch, and also go to talknerdymerch.com.
Yeah.
Hey.
And we'd like to thank Ian for helping.
Where's your camera, Ian?
Thanks, Ian. All right, guys, we'll see you next week.
Bye.
See everyone next week.
Bye, guys.
Wash your hands.
Goodbye, my friends. Wash your hands.
Bye-bye.
Wash those hands.
Oh, little man.
By SG. For more information, visit us at theskepticsguide.org. Send your questions to info@theskepticsguide.org. And if you would like to support the show and all the work that we do, go to patreon.com/skepticsguide and consider becoming a patron and becoming part of the SGU community. Our listeners and supporters are what make SGU possible.